Welcome, everyone. This is Pat Bailey, Director of Training at Out and Equal Workplace Advocates, and you've joined us for the December 2014 Town Call, the end of the year. And this is a broadcast audio call. You should be hearing us through your computer, so make sure you turn your volume up or put your headsets in. If you're having any trouble signing in, you can go to readytalk.com, join a meeting, and use the access code 6946521. You should be hearing us now. If not, chat me and I can send you a contact number if we need to get you in there. And if you have to drop off or leave for any reason early, we will be recording this session and it will be found in our archives. You'll get a follow-up email sometime later today that will have a link to listen to as well as the slides, and we'll get that out to everyone. Our town call this month is going to be recognizing World AIDS Day, and we've got two presenters from two different perspectives. Pamela Denzer, who's going to talk to us from Immigration Equality about that aspect of HIV and AIDS in the workplace and immigration, and Aditi Hadikar, who is the new LGBT White House liaison. And we'll introduce them more, and they'll have a little more information for you, and also there'll be time for Q&A at the end. So as they are doing their presentations, please think about going ahead and entering some questions, and we'll do that. A couple of announcements coming up. Brand new year coming with 2015. We have just finished up the process of getting the ratings for all of the summit workshops, and we're taking our top 6 or so and creating a virtual summit series so we can take the summit home, or if you didn't get a chance to go to that particular workshop, if you were at the summit, we haven't got them all fully scheduled yet, but they're going to kick off on January 13th. And then again, we're going to have our monthly town calls, which are usually on the last Thursday of the month at noon Pacific. And you can see there, starting in March, we're going to start our Building Bridges program. That's our Out and Equal University education. So lots is going on. I will tell you that we're having some trouble with the website. It's up and down right now. We got the new one up, and we love it, but it's got hit with a bug, and we're down and back up. So it's coming up slowly. So give us a couple of days to get it sorted out. It's been down for about 10 days now, and we're making that happen. But things like the slides from the summit, all of the town call information, and all of the training and education will be up there soon. So please hang with us as we get through that. On the webinar today, again, if you want to chat and ask any questions, there's a chat box to the side there that you can go ahead and chat your information in here and hit send. The presenters will see that, and so we'll be able to answer those questions. If you have any technical problems, you can raise your hand up here on the top, and I can help you with that. We're going to do a couple of polls during the session today, so when you see a poll come up, go ahead and answer those and hit submit, and you'll get a graphic representation of the results of the group with that. Right now we've got about 30 folks on the call. We'll probably pick up a few more with that, and we'll get into the call with that. Wanted to start today talking a little bit about World AIDS Day, which was December 1st each year. Started in 1988, and it's grown into an opportunity to be a worldwide event, fighting against HIV, for showing support for people living with HIV, and to commemorate those who've died. So I'm going to put up the next screen, which is our first poll, and asking everybody to type in the names of those that you want to remember this year that we've lost to HIV and AIDS. And while you're typing in those answers, I wanted to ask Pamela to talk a little bit about what's World AIDS Day for you, and how did you get involved in all this?
Sure. Thank you, Pat. And I want to say to everyone I'm very excited to participate in this call. So the last few, I apologize for the crack in my voice, the last few World AIDS Day, I have to say that one recurring theme that occurs to me is the ending of the HIV travel ban, which we'll discuss further in my presentation. When I started in the movement, when I started my legal career, I have to say that the HIV ban was still in place, and it was very difficult to represent HIV-positive immigrants and having to explain to them that unfortunately they could not obtain legal status simply on account of their HIV status, and predominantly my LGBT families were the ones that were most impacted by this awful ban, and I often think about those that were not able to be reunited with their family members.
Excellent. And we're getting some names being typed in here. Phil Proctor, Avery, Greg, Brett, Norman, Bill, Shannon, David Faj. Again, many of us, there's a lot of generational work I'm seeing that's happening now about your age, and if you knew someone who has died from HIV and AIDS, that it's one of those defining moments for our population in the U.S., and then it's also impacting, obviously, around the world. So I want to take just a minute and just let everybody just kind of remember either those that you've lost that are living with or where your feelings are around HIV and AIDS, and then we'll get into our call. Thank you. Appreciate that, and appreciate all the thoughts and the energy. So we're going to jump in, and we're going to look at how we take this to the workplace and we keep this work going. I've got another poll now about, do you work for a multinational company? So if you select your answer, yes, no, not applicable, prefer not to answer, and then hit submit, we'll get a poll that will pop up here. And right now we see about 75% of our audience does work for a multinational company. 27.8, looks like we've got about 75% of the attendees who have voted on that. Make sure you hit the submit button so you can see the results. And again, holding right about 75% work for multinationals, companies on that, which may or may not be based in the U.S. Our second question that we want to ask about is about health insurance. Do you have health insurance? And you can select all that apply here. Do you have it for yourself in the U.S. and your family in the U.S., for yourself outside the U.S., and for your family outside the U.S., or no for yourself, no for your family, not applicable, or prefer not to answer? So this one has a combination effect, recognizing health insurances around the world. We're going to take our second part of our call with Aditi to talk about a little bit about health care, focusing on the U.S., but also taking some time to realize that for multinational companies, when you're working outside the states, that can be an impact as well. So it looks like we've got about 68% have insurance for themselves, 36% have for their family. Outside of the U.S., about 4% have insurance for themselves, and we've got about 4% that would prefer not to answer. So again, overwhelmingly, we have about 68%. Looks like that's the final number coming in the U.S. So we're going to go ahead and start the discussion, and we'll use this data as we get into the call a little bit more. But I want to introduce Pamela Denzer from the Asylum Program Supervisor from Immigration Equality. So Pamela, your first slide is up.
Sure. Thank you. So today I'm going to go over two sort of aspects of immigration law. One is, how immigration law, specifically the Windsor case and the repeal of DOMA, have impacted LGBT immigration issues, as well as what we're currently seeing with respect to HIV-positive immigrants. So, Pat, if you go to the background slide, please. One of the major cases that comes up when we talk about DOMA, binational couples, is the, now I would term, infamous Adams v. Howerton case. And for those of you that are not familiar with that, this is the case that sort of started the whole same-sex marriage recognition and the denial of it by the federal government. Richard Adams, an American citizen, was married to Anthony Sullivan in Colorado, in Boulder County to be specific, back in the 70s, when for a period of time same-sex marriage was possible. Mr. Adams then petitioned for his legal spouse with the what was then known as the Immigration Immigration National Service for Mr. Sullivan, for his husband to get a green card. Not only was the petition denied, but the couple received a letter, and one of the most telling things in the letter was that the couple had failed to establish the bona fide of their marital relationship because it cannot exist between two faggots. So not only did they invalidate the fact that they had a marriage, but they also said that Mr. Sullivan was not able to get his green card. The couple sued. Unfortunately, they were not successful, and ultimately, the courts decided that the denial of the green card was correct because Congress had allowed for states to come up with a definition of marriage, and that marriage was still foremost between a man and a woman. Eventually, Windsor would overturn all of that, which we're all very thankful about now, but that was the law back then. Another factor that a lot of individuals are not aware of is that prior to 1990, homosexuality itself was also a ground of exclusion to the United States. That means that if you were found to be homosexual and you were either an intending immigrant coming to the country or a non-immigrant visitor, student here on a work visa, you would be denied entry into the United States. And as a lot of callers are probably aware of, up until 2010, there was the ban on HIV-positive foreign nationals entering the United States for travel, immigration purposes, coming here as students. Next slide, please, Pat. I'm going to skip over the terminology slides, which are the two slides that are following, because I think most of us are familiar with those, that we usually include them. We think it is important for individuals to be familiar with some of the terms. But Pat, if you will move on to the Defense of Marriage Act slide. So one of the things to keep in mind is that Section 2 so far is still in force now of the Defense of Marriage Act. Section 2 says that no state shall be required to recognize marriages between same-sex couples. Most experts say that that too will be going away, but for now it is still in force. Section 3 is what fell in the Windsor case, and that is that no longer is it required that on a federal level, that the legal union marriage be between a man and a woman. The Windsor decision impacted over 1,100 federal rights and benefits, immigration being just one of the many. It was a constitutional challenge, as most of you know, and it's what allowed for our LGBT couples to sponsor their same-sex spouses. Next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about the difference between the responses to the Windsor decision with respect to the Department of State, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and USCIS. So USCIS, once the Windsor decision came out, made it available so that for gay and lesbian couples to file I-130 petitions, that's the spousal petition that U.S. citizens as well as lawful permanent residents file, so that after they've married their partners, they can sponsor them for green cards. And I-129F petitions, that's what's known as a K-visa petition, so that you can bring your fiancés into the country. One of the things with respect to USCIS's responses is that they look at the place of celebration when they're determining the validity of a marriage. So this is a huge win for couples living in non-marriage equality states, because what that means is that the Immigration Service is not going to look at whether you have marriage equality in your state. They're going to look at, was the marriage recognized in the state where it occurred? So right now, currently, I believe that we're at 35 states plus the District of Columbia where marriage equality is available. For some of our clients that reside in states where either there is no marriage equality or appeals are pending, we recommend that they travel to a marriage equality state to get married so that they can sponsor their partners. Next slide, please. Department of State did not want to lag behind, so they also clarified the celebration rule a little bit further, and they're saying that even if the marriage is illegal in the country of residence of the couple, they can still apply at that consulate. So, if a couple is residing in Egypt, the U.S. Egyptian consulate will still have to recognize the marriage, even if it took place in South Africa, for example, or even if the couple traveled to the United States and then back to Egypt. The other thing is that Department of State went further to reference that sponsors, that's U.S. citizens, can also sponsor their stepchildren for immigration benefits. Next slide, please. So one of the things that didn't happen perhaps in a way that some of our LGBT families would like is that civil unions and marriage-like relationships post-Windsor, Department of State has clearly said that they will only recognize marriages. They're not going to recognize civil unions, which are more common in European countries and some other non-European states where you do have this idea of civil unions. Unfortunately, they're not recognized, so that if a couple does have a civil union, they're either going to have to go to a country that has marriage equality or come to the United States and get married in a marriage equality state. Common law marriages, if they meet the local definition for a marriage-like treatment of the relationship, will work. We think that perhaps there will be a lawsuit challenging the civil unions, but as far as it is today, that's still the rule that civil unions will not be considered to be a marriage union. Next slide, please. As far as children, specifically for a U.S. citizen to be able to file for the child as a stepchild, the relationship should have been formed before the child reached the age of 18. This can be a problem for some of our families with respect to the issue of civil unions or domestic partnerships, because if that relationship entered into, with respect to the civil union or the domestic partnership, happened before the child was 18, but now the couple has married and the child is 21, they most likely will not be viewed as eligible to obtain a green card through their step-parent because the relationship did not occur prior to the 18th birthdays. This can be very tricky when we're talking about the children that are sort of on the cusp of the end, and can present some challenges to our families. Next slide, please. The other issue that comes up is proving the bona fides of the marriage. It can be very difficult to do this because if you've resided either in a non-marriage equality state or country, you may not have joint tax returns post-DOMA. You wouldn't have joint federal tax returns pre-DOMA. For some of our clients living abroad, we see that they really take great steps to minimize evidence of their relationship. So, they don't want to be on leases. They don't want to be on property deeds. They don't want to have commingling of finances. A lot of this is around the issue of their concern that if their employer learns, they'll suffer employment discrimination. It's out of safety concerns for their partners. In some cases, people are not out to their families, friends. They're concerned about being out to their neighbors. This can make it very hard to prove to both either state or immigration or ICE the bona fides of the relationship existed. Next slide, please. Now, one of the questions that we're often asked is when individuals are returning with their partners back to the United States and they're obtaining visas, what do they answer? Do they, because they might be residing in a country that does not recognize their marriage, do they answer single or married on the non-immigrant visa application? Immigration Service has indicated that anyone that answered single before the Windsor decision came out will not be considered to have misrepresented their marital status, even if they were married. This area becomes a little bit murky after the date of the Windsor decision, which is June 26, 2013, so that if you were to answer not married, single today, and you were in fact married, that might be considered to be a misrepresentation on your application, which might pose problems for the individual foreign national to obtain a green card in the future. Next slide, please. Sometimes couples, we hear, face added scrutiny because there may have been prior marriages before the current marriage. Adjudicators are still slow to come around to understand things like bisexuality, not being out yet, family pressure, fear and safety concerns, why prior marriages may have happened. We have had some couples that have experienced problems based on this. Next slide, please. The affidavit of support is an issue for a lot of our couples that are returning. Anytime you sponsor your spouse for a green card, you must file an affidavit of support which shows that your intending spouse will not become a public charge on the U.S. government if a green card is issued. You're supposed to be residing in the United States in order to file that green card. The State Department has actually sort of clarified this a bit so that now if the U.S. citizen can demonstrate that they intend to domicile themselves in the U.S. upon their return, that might be sufficient for the affidavit of support to be approved. So things like that might mean a job offer, might mean a lease or property deed, or if there were children enrolling them in a school located in the United States, insurance benefits that are held in the United States. Those are just some of the examples to show that you intend on making the U.S. your domicile should you return to the United States. Next slide, please. I have up here for people to look at the almost 80 countries that still contain some form of anti-LGBT laws. As you can see, there's still many, many around the world. Some of the areas that we see most of our clients coming from are areas in the Caribbean, Western Africa, Russia, some of the East European nations. With respect to HIV, we've been seeing several callers coming to us, clients coming to us in China. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Next slide, please. So when couples are applying to have their foreign national partners come to the United States, there's safety concerns with respect to the consular interviews. Some of the concerns are local folks that work at the consulates that are not U.S. citizens but are employed there to help the embassy may get wind of what's going on and may tell communities about the fact that this individual is either looking for a visa because their same-sex partner wants to sponsor them for a fiancé visa or their same-sex spouse is sponsoring them. Some of the ways in which these concerns are addressed are the interviews sometimes may be scheduled at off hours so that, it's ability to have a little bit more privacy in the consulate. We're looking into possibility of having an individual couple look to have their interview being conducted in a third country. So that would mean, for example, if you're residing in Egypt and you're really concerned about going to the Egyptian embassy, maybe you can travel to, the Moroccan embassy because you won't be recognized there. There is training that's going to be going on for staff so that they understand that there is a greater need and a greater emphasis on confidentiality when we're talking about these cases. There's also the redacting of first names for the couple to try and protect individuals' confidentiality a bit more. And with respect to the visa packet, we're told now that once the application is initially approved by USCIS, for a fiancé visa, if you put an action alert which says urgent K visa on the packet, when the National Visa Center gets it and they're responsible for sending it to the individual consulate, they will put that alert on there so that it's understood that that packet should not be opened in the mailroom of the consulate, since they tend to be staffed by locals and not by U.S. citizens, that the names should be redacted on there, that should be opened by embassy staff and not locals, all in an effort to try and protect an individual's confidentiality and hopefully keep from outing them to their families if they're not already out, and or to their communities. Some of the responses that ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, has had is that they have agreed to reopen marriage-based petition cases where the only reason that the case was denied was solely on the basis of DOMA. And it's not a lot of cases that that's affected by, because prior to DOMA, most individuals knew that they could not file for green cards even if they had a marriage. ICE will consider reopening other cases that were denied on other grounds, for example, with respect to removal cases, if the individual did not go to their initial court hearing because they were afraid of being deported, and in absentia, meaning that the judge had the right to order them removed without the person being present. Order was issued. There's been discrepancy in how this rule is applied, but some jurisdictions will reopen the cases if the individual is now married and is seeking to get a green card through their spouse. Others will not. There isn't clear guidance on this. we're hoping that this gets cleared up in 2015. Next slide, please. So families that all of these wonderful things that have happened since DOMA fell that are still not helped. Unmarried partners of asylees and refugees left behind in the country of persecution. We see this a lot. Currently, if you're granted asylum in the United States, you're eligible to apply for your spouses and your children under the age of 21 to follow, to join you if you had to leave them behind. But you must be married. We have a lot of families where one partner came to the country first. There's many different reasons for that. Some of it economic, some of it safety concerns, some of it with respect to children and trying to get visas for children. But if the couple is not married, you cannot file a petition for the rest of the family members to join. It's also really difficult with respect to countries where there isn't marriage equality, and you have individuals that are here in the United States working for multinational companies, and they're on J-1 visas, H-1B work visas, O visas, which allow for the employment of individuals with special skills. They've left their partners behind, and they can't file applications to have them join them in a derivative status because they're not married. We're looking into the possibility of applying for humanitarian parole to try and reunite individuals that have compelling humanitarian reasons. So far, we've not been successful in that, but we're going to continue doing the fight. Next slide, please. So now we come to the HIV ban and its history. In 1987, the Department of Health and Human Services added HIV and AIDS to its list of communicable diseases. In 1993, Congress amended the Immigration and Nationality Act to include HIV. In 2007, Representative Barbara Lee and former Senator John Kerry, introduced legislation to try and repeal the statutory ban. In July of 2008, President Bush signed the PEPFAR bill, which was the first step to start the process of removing the ban. In August of 2008, USCIS issued a memo stating that the HHS published the final rules and there was still no change with respect to how you adjudicate an application from someone that's HIV positive. Next slide, please. In 2009, July 2nd, Health and Human Services issued the proposed regulations, and that was when finally HIV was removed from its list of communicable diseases, as well as the removal of the HIV testing requirement. In August of 2009, the comment period closed regarding the removal of these two items from the HHS proposed regulations. 23,000 comments were in favor of lifting the ban, 550 opposed, 400 organizations favored lifting the ban, 0 opposed, 4 asked that the HIV testing continued. In November 2nd of 2009, the final regulation was issued, and this was implemented on January 4th, 2010. Now, the ending of the HIV travel ban has helped non-immigrant visitors and students. So that's individuals that come here on tourist visas, individuals that come here on student visas, on J-1 visas to study. It's also helped individuals that are trying to get employment-based green cards. It's helped individuals that are attempting to get family-based green card applications but did not have a qualifying relative, so that in the past you could have tried to obtain a limited HIV waiver. It's helped individuals that win the diversity visa lottery. It's also helped some asylees and refugees, as well as Cubans that are able to adjust and apply for a green card through the Cuban Adjustment Act. Next slide, please. So we want to make clear that public charge issues still apply to family-based green card applications. What that means is that if your HIV status, while it will not be tested on the medical exam that's required of all intending immigrants, if in the determination of either the Department of State or USCIS they decide that you will become a public charge, they could deny your green card. What we have been seeing recently is the requirement from the CDC, not immigration, regarding TB screening. We're getting queries now that applicants are being required to provide sputum tests, and that these specimens have to be tested, because what they're saying is the rationale is that individuals with immunocompromised systems may not develop antibodies if they're only using the skin prick TB test. This testing is causing delays of about 60 days in cases and in adjudication, and it's even longer than 60 days if you happen to live in a country where there aren't lab facilities and the test requirements have to be sent abroad and then sent back to the consulate. I want to say thank you to everyone for participating. Immigration Equality is always available to help individuals that need assistance in navigating some of these issues.
Pamela, thanks very much and appreciate that. A lot of good information thinking about, working in multinational companies and going through that. So, again, if you've got questions, go ahead and chat those in. We had a couple that came in during Pamela's portion. We'll put that in the Q&A. But I want to now move over to the second part of this and kind of shift gears a little bit and get a chance to meet Aditi and also to talk a little bit about, healthcare and what's happening with the changes within the U.S. that also impact us around the world. So, Aditi, you're on your first slide.
Great. Thanks so much, Pat. Thanks, Pamela, for all the information. As somebody who is a non-lawyer, that was also helpful to me. And thanks to everyone on the call for taking time out of your Thursday before Christmas, if you celebrate it, to chat with all of us. So, like I said, I'm not a lawyer, but my name is Aditi Hardikar. I'm the new Associate Director at the White House Office of Public Engagement, where I serve as the liaison to the LGBT community, as well as the AAPI community, the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. And so I just wanted to, first of all, introduce myself to you all. I don't think I've met most of you on the call. It's been about a month since I've been here. I come to the White House Office of Public Engagement from the Democratic National Committee, where I was fundraising through the LGBT community as well as the AAPI community. Prior to that, I'd worked for the Presidential Inaugural Committee as the LGBT Finance Director, and prior to that, I was working on the 2011-2012 Obama-Biden re-election campaign in Chicago, where I was engaging LGBT voters in battleground states, as well as fundraising nationally with the LGBT community. So really honored to be here. It's been, a really amazing just 1 month, so it's pretty telling, what the next 2 years look like. There's a lot left to be done, and I think we've seen with yesterday's announcement from the president that he is charting a new course with diplomatic relations with Cuba and a host of other actions that the president has been taking, he's very, very interested in making this the most productive fourth quarter that he can, fourth quarter as he lovingly refers to it. So just really thrilled and honored to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you, of course, Pat and Out and Equal, and seeing how we can continue the public and private partnerships that so that enrich the work that we do and are so integral to the work that we do. So Pat, you don't mind going to the next slide? And actually that first photo on the first slide was the president signing the executive order banning discrimination against LGBT employees of employers who have contracts and subcontracts with the federal government. So that was just a fun photo to show us. But so the next slide, the resources slide, I just wanted you all to have sort of those links at your disposal. These are really fantastic resources for you all to have. whitehouse.gov/LGBT has a really thorough fact sheet that I encourage you all to look at. We post blog posts regularly. We cross-post from other agencies as well as other groups. So definitely check that out. whitehouse.gov/engage is my office's website. And there's plenty of ways that you can take action in your communities, and if there are people that you think would be interested, you should definitely point them to that. Healthcare.gov, which is something we'll be talking about for the next few minutes, in case your family members or loved ones or friends need health care. The deadline is, of course, February 15th. And then finally, outtoenroll.org. I'll talk a little bit more about Out to Enroll if you haven't already heard about it. But they're our outside partner. They work with the Center for American Progress, specifically and solely working on LGBT-targeted outreach on behalf of the Affordable Care Act. So I'll talk a little more about that, but just wanted to make sure that you all had that resource. So if we head to the next slide. I just wanted to sort of, it's been a really hugely productive and progressive last 5 years in terms of our community. We've seen so much progress in the last 5 years, let alone 40. I think it's, pretty unequivocal that this president has done more than any other president in our history when it comes to supporting the rights of the LGBT community. Whether that's, advocating for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, whether that was refusing to defend the Defense of Marriage Act in court, whether that was, most recently announcing the executive action on immigration, which additionally supports our community. I think there have been such a wide range of really big sort of glossy accomplishments, like the signing of the executive order this July, but also smaller accomplishments like, declaring hospital visitation rights for LGBT couples, redefining the term family in the Family and Medical Leave Act to include LGBT families, granting medical decision-making for LGBT partners, conducting an Institute of Medicine study on LGBT health, and actually the first ever lesbian and bisexual women's health survey. And there are a whole host of other really fantastic accomplishments. I've listed a few on this background slide, and also the URL www.hhs.gov/LGBT has a really fantastic archive of all the great things that have been accomplished just in the health arena. And of course, that last bullet point, the president developed the first ever national HIV/AIDS strategy, which is now housed under ONAP, which is the Office of National AIDS Prevention. So just wanted to sort of set the tone of, just remind everyone on the call the really amazing progress that we've seen in the last 5 years, but then also talk about how we can work towards more. So if, Pat, you don't mind going to the next slide. So this is something that most people might not think about, but health is an equality issue. Our community has been, disproportionately affected by all kinds of health disparities, whether that's substance abuse or different types of cancer, or simply just having no access to health care. I think, when the president signed the Affordable Care Act in 2010, I don't think, a lot of folks, far and wide in the community or in the non-LGBT community sort of saw this as an LGBT civil rights accomplishment, but it certainly is, and here's why. The ACA is a federal non-discrimination law. It imbues LGBT people with a brand new set of rights. When it comes to health insurance providers, they can no longer raise rates for individuals or flat out deny coverage based on a pre-existing condition, whether that is HIV/AIDS, whether that is having some sort of chronic illness, whether that's having cancer or asthma, or simply by being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender. I think this is something that our community has seen for decades where, folks were, humiliated and embarrassed and discriminated against when having to sort of come out to their health insurance providers. So it, sort of this legacy of discrimination has prevented, folks in our community from actually going out and seeking the really vital care that they need. Something that's kind of fun that we tell people is that Obamacare recognizes your relationship. If you are a legally married same-sex couple, you have the right to not be discriminated against as you offer or as you extend coverage to your same-sex partner. The caveat to this is even if you are not legally married, if you file your taxes jointly, then that is sort of the same thing in this law's eyes as being married when it comes to extending your benefits to your partner. And so there are some really explicit non-discrimination. The verbiage is very explicit, especially on healthcare.gov. So if any of you have been on this website or have, family or friends that have been on it, there's a whole host of different steps you need to take to get coverage, and there's, filling out your tax forms and things like that. But at the end, there is just a single page that says, I have read and agreed to the non-discrimination terms. And in this sort of category, it's race, ethnicity, religion, et cetera, and it also has sexual orientation and gender identity. So this is a federal law. It's the law of the land, and so it prevents the sort of entrenched discrimination that has often occurred in the health arena. And so, Pat, if you could move to the next slide. I wanted to address some of the successes that we've already seen just from, since the first open enrollment period from last year all the way through early this year. We just got a new set of data, which I will discuss in the next slide, but the nation's uninsured rate is now at or near the lowest level recorded across 5 decades of data, which is huge. And I'll tell you some more specific numbers in the next slide, but we have seen a drastic drop in the rate of uninsured Americans. Some of the things that we've been doing specifically with the LGBT community is we are training our assisters who take calls or meet with people in person on cultural competency. So making sure they know, what questions to ask people of the LGBT community, how best to sort of look for plans that can meet their needs, whether that's, plans that cover HIV/AIDS treatment, or whether that's plans that explicitly allow, non-married same-sex partners to extend benefits. So we have seen some really great successes in that all across the country. Whether that's in Texas or whether that's in New York. So we're very pleased with that sort of training that we've been able to do. We've learned from our friends at CAP that the numbers show that prior to the first open enrollment period of the Affordable Care Act, 1 in 3 LGBT people were uninsured. Since that time, we have actually been able to lower that number to 1 in 4. So that's kind of a pretty dramatic drop in the rate of uninsured LGBT people. And as many of us know or might not know, our community is disproportionately affected by not having access to care and not having insurance. And historically, our community has been has seen lower rates of being insured. So we're very pleased with that. And then also, as I was mentioning, with Out to Enroll, we've been doing some really targeted LGBT outreach. We've realized that one of the biggest barriers to dropping the uninsured rate of our community is education. Even though we have this really fantastic sweeping federal law and this new sort of set of rights for LGBT people, because of that legacy of discrimination, we are finding that a lot of people just simply don't know about these rights and benefits. So we have been sort of traveling to a host of different states and cities. I just actually came back yesterday from a 4-city swing in Texas. We did Houston, Austin, San Marcos, and El Paso, and we participated in events, enrollment events, as well as town hall type education events at MCCs, at local community centers, at HIV/AIDS centers, at Texas State University, for example. And we're finding that this very targeted outreach is key to actually disseminating this information, where we're finding people who, had no idea that these benefits were available and that these rights were available. And so we're going to continue to do this all the way up through February 15th, which is that final deadline of this open enrollment period. And we're really sort of optimistic in terms of the number of people we'll be able to reach, both in person and as well as with a really robust digital strategy with various LGBT celebrities and blog posts and viral videos and all kinds of fun stuff. And then finally, something that I think might be of interest to the folks on this call is our public-private partnerships. Sort of across the board, we've been seeing private companies and businesses, kind of taking the initiative and thinking about their part-time workers or other workers that might not have access to employment insurance. So for instance, IKEA recently has decided to work with Enroll America and work with our partners to get certified navigators, so people who actually are certified to go on healthcare.gov with a person looking to enroll in healthcare and actually help that person step by step. So they are working on getting navigators actually in their IKEA stores across the country, and that I think is a perfect example of public-private partnerships and how we can really sort of build on each other's strengths to get this message out and to get, specifically our community enrolled in health insurance. Next slide, please. So just a few numbers that I wanted to share with you guys. As of December 12th, about 2.5 million consumers selected plans through our marketplace, and large numbers of new and renewing consumers continued to shop throughout this weekend. So we're still getting those numbers from our December 15th deadline, and that deadline on the screen was to get care by January 1st. And of course, I have to mention again the February 15th deadline. And we need to enroll millions more to actually reach our goal of 9.1 individuals enrolled in marketplace coverage. And this number includes both folks who are re-enrolling from the last open enrollment period, as well as brand new individuals enrolling. Next slide. And so this is a graph that we actually just, that was released today. And this is sort of estimating the effectiveness of the first open enrollment period. And so the study that we're using is National Health Interview Survey. It's that orange bar on this bar graph. But you know, the margin of error from 9.5 to 10.6 is pretty standard in this survey, but the number we're going with is 9.7. But this is the estimated increase in coverage by the millions from the time before the open enrollment period happened, and then by the time the first open enrollment period had concluded earlier this year. So 9.7 million is not sort of any small number to sneeze at, and we know that we can get you know, millions more enrolled by February 15th, of course with your help and with help of community partners all across the country. Next slide. And so some challenges that we're taking into account and keeping in mind as we move forward through February 15th, and frankly beyond this open enrollment period. I bring up that figure 1 in 3 to 1 in 4 again, because while that is a really fantastically dramatic shift in terms of the drop in the rates of uninsured LGBT Americans, it's still a huge number. It's still 25%. And you know, in places like Texas, where I was this past week, we know that the statewide uninsured rate is 1 in 4 of all Texans. So we can only, you know, with just sort of simple extrapolation, know that the rate must be higher in Texas. And so really, you know, acknowledging the fact that this is a really dramatic drop, but also that there's still so much work to be done. And I bring up education again, just as it's our success, it also continues to be a challenge, you know, because as I said, you know, our community has historically been an uninsured population, and you know, education is key. So we really hope that especially the folks on the phone with multinational corporations and you know, who are really engaged in the community and diverse communities, you know, we really hope that you'll sort of get this message out. And then, you know, as I said, the legacy of discrimination is a deterrent, which hopefully will be challenged by some really broad and robust education. And then finally, transgender Americans. So this administration has done more than, you know, any other administration in history in terms of increasing the rights and dignity of transgender Americans. And you know, notwithstanding the fact that the president was the first sitting president to even say the word transgender in public. And so when we do our targeted outreach, the most asked question, especially on out to enroll, is what if I'm trans? And you know, luckily with our really robust assister training and navigator training, we're able to sort of arm our assisters with the knowledge of which plans cover certain things like hormone therapy and other things like that, just to make sure that you know, trans Americans are able to find the plan that works best for them. Of course, there still are trans-related exclusions, and it's something that, you know, we've been working hard with the community to figure out. Places like New York just declared that they will not have a trans-related exclusion in their health plan, so there will be no trans exclusion in any of the health plans in New York. So that's a really huge success for the community and a huge success for the country, and we're hoping to see more models like that continue on. And again, if folks have specific questions about trans-related care, they can turn to outtoenroll.org, and like I said, their most asked question that they get on that website is, what if I'm trans? So that's a really fantastic resource to sort of point to, and we're hoping to continue to make strides forward. And I actually did want to highlight a really fantastic move forward that we saw today from the Department of Justice. Attorney General Eric Holder released a memo saying that under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which bans discrimination based on sex, that the DOJ will now include gender identity under that ruling. So this is a huge, groundbreaking announcement, and we're really excited to work with the DOJ and make sure that claimants, who are suing on behalf of being fired for their gender identity will get the support and resources that they need. That was a little bit of a sidebar, but I thought it important to note. And then next and final slide. So I just wanted to pull up the resources again, just so that, if anyone had any lingering questions or wanted to point, friends and family or coworkers to specific resources that they can, copy those down and have those. But that concludes my presentation. I just wanted to underscore the fact that the way to get our community enrolled in healthcare is really through education, because we have this really fantastic framework of advocating on behalf of non-discrimination for LGBT people as they, access their basic right, which is access to healthcare. And so I hope that, you will give us your suggestions and give us your support and any other way that we might be able to more effectively reach our community. Thanks so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Aditi. That's great information and some good connections. I know we've probably got some regional affiliate members and some of the ERGs who can reach out in their local communities and help that. I can imagine that through our Pride networks and those organizations that would be helpful. So I will also, we've got a couple of folks who have asked about email contacts and information that they want to reach out to you, so I will also send that information out after the call so that they can reach out to you directly, if that works. And Pamela, are you good with that, if I send your email out with that follow-up as well?
Absolutely, Pat. Thank you.
Okay, great. Did get a couple of questions in. Pamela, back on your discussion when we're talking about being out and trying to keep people safe in terms of the process of coming in from countries. Question was asked about social media and being out and how that has either helped or complicated your work, and then about the aspect of if companies want to know or not know, and how easy is it for them to find out about same-sex orientation from a social media side.
I'm so sorry for coughing. Please excuse me.
No problem.
One of the things with respect to social media, specifically with regards to our asylum seekers, it has certainly helped. We've actually have been successful with claims for individuals that have been in the United States for a number of years, not to go too off topic, but in order to qualify for asylum, you must file for asylum within 1 year of arriving in the United States. And if you miss that 1 year period, you must be able to demonstrate that you've fit one of two very narrowly defined exceptions. One of them is extraordinary circumstances and the other is changed circumstances. Some of our clients have been outed on social media, and we use that as a changed circumstance exception to say, before I was able to live closeted, now I can't. Everyone back home in fill in the blank what the back home is aware because someone saw me coming out of a club in the States and they've posted pictures online. So that's certainly one way. It's also helped with respect to some of our clients being able to establish their relationship, because in the age of social media, sometimes with respect to the bona fides of the case, you can use some of that to establish the relationship as far as when the couple met, because some of our clients, some of our families do meet over social media. So it sort of works in both areas with respect to asylum seekers as well as individuals that are trying to get their partners here to the United States. And
Excellent.
I am sorry, I don't remember if you could repeat the second question.
Just mostly about companies knowing that and how that can be helpful about being out, because we see a lot of folks are still in the closet in the workplace, and so we have some self-ID work, but basically how easy is it for companies to find that out to be helpful, or is that something that you should be working on?
I really think it depends on the company. I mean, it also depends on where the employee is. Clearly, being out in countries that have real histories of documented human rights abuse against the LGBT community is just, in our opinion, probably not safe. um, it's in this day and age, it's pretty easy for companies to find just about anything that's posted in social media online. So individuals really need to be very careful. And I meet with clients just on a daily basis where they're sort of like, I never dreamed of walking into a law office hand in hand with my partner saying, hey, can you help us? It's definitely something that's not sort of on a case-by-case basis.
Definitely. And Aditi, somebody asked about the DOG and the holder announcement. Is that posted somewhere, and where can they find that? Is that on one of those resource pages?
It's not yet on the resource page. We just released it actually as we were dialing into this call. But there's an article out in the AP. And if Pat, if you want me to send you the official release, and if you want to share it with folks on the call, I'm happy to do that as well.
Sounds good. I'll include those links and the other resource links you had put in there, as well as the Immigration Equality website to find that information. And Aditi, we had one other question that asked about, since we're kind of talking about the HIV and AIDS, about the Red Cross ban on donations for gay men, and what does that look like? I mean, I know that's not a federal, government organization, but has there been any discussion about that since that's been announced?
Yeah, so obviously this is an issue that's really important to our community, and I know that the FDA has been working to sort of review this because it is, of course, a really decades-old rule and ban, and the FDA has been debating a 12-month policy which would allow MSM, men who have sex with men, to give blood as long as they have not been sexually active for 12 months prior to donating. That is the sort of most recent step that they have been debating and reviewing. It is a decision within the FDA. I know a lot of community activists as well as members of Congress and others have been really sort of lobbying hard to have more of a risk-based assessment of this ban, but as sort of, today, the recent update is the 12-month kind of moratorium.
Great, and I just got your link and posted that out for everybody on the call, so that's really helpful. So we're coming up, great information and amazing information, so I wanted to give you both a chance to do some closing comments, and I'm sure this is going to spur more conversation. But Pamela, any last thoughts or closing comments on the call?
Sure. I just want to remind individuals that, it's wonderful that DOMA, at least, Section 3 of it is no longer the law in the land, and that, it seems like every couple of months marriage equality is moving closer and closer to that entire United States marriage equality, which is wonderful. But, there's still issues, there's still things to be worked on, there's still really horrific conditions that are going on worldwide. Russia comes to mind. We're getting calls now from Russian families where courts are now issuing orders trying to remove their children because they feel that being lesbian or gay in and of itself is a reason for you not to be a fit parent. So there's still a lot of work to be done out there, and immigration equality, as always, is at the leader in that fight, and we will continue that fight.
And much appreciated, definitely. Aditi, how about you? Any last thoughts?
Those were great remarks, Pamela. Of course, while we do celebrate a lot of progress that we've seen, in the last 5 years, a little in the last 40 years, there is so much work to do here and abroad. And I think with the continued commitment of community members, of community organizations, of advocates like me, of advocates like Pamela and Pat, and as well as representatives of business in the private sector, like the folks on the call, I think that that's sort of kind of the sweet spot of how to continue to make progress and make change for people who really need it.
Excellent. I want to thank both of you for all the insights and work that you're doing. It's great to hear those perspectives and talk about one of those benefits that we talk about so much about for the workplace, and how there's some subtleties of how our lives don't always work as planned, and we're still getting used to getting those benefits and getting everybody signed up for that. And I want to thank all of you on the call for joining us. Again, we'll send out a short survey as you close your computer after this call, and I'll send you a follow-up email with all the links. We'll be back in 2015 2014 for our first town call with a Marsh McClellan report on global mobility. And again, we are already starting to talk about making plans for the summit in Dallas on October 5th through 8th. And please check out the website. And however you celebrate your holidays, please enjoy those and come back and join us next year. And we're looking forward to having you a bigger and better year for equality. So thanks a lot, everybody, and we'll see you next year.